Welcome to another episode of Got Time with Christopher John, your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. Black studies emerged in the 1960s as a response to ongoing racial struggles. Black studies encompasses a wide range of disciplines, including Black history, Black psychology, Black religion, Black politics, Black social organization, Black creative production, and Black economics. Black studies focuses on the history, culture, and experiences of people of African descent, specifically the social and political context in the U.S. At some institutions, you may find Pan-African studies. Pan-African studies takes a global approach, examining the histories and connections of African people across Africa and the diaspora, with an emphasis on shared identity and colonialism and worldwide movements. But before we get into our conversation, I wish to acknowledge the audacious courage of Ricky Jones, Distinguished Professor of Pan-African Studies at the University of Louisville. He's been documenting and sharing the challenges amid attempts to erase and diminish the examination of histories and scholarships associated with the African diaspora. Keep advocating for Black studies and remain vocal about the realities regarding the systemic destruction of Black thought in higher education. Joining me at the table today is a professor of history and an associate dean in the College of Arts and Science with almost 35 years of academic experience in higher education. He has taught numerous classes in the fields of American and African American history, race relations, and peace studies. With over 50 publications, yes, I said over 50 publications, he is a trusted scholarly resource. His most recent book, An Introduction to Black Studies, demonstrates the continuing need for Black studies in university curriculum. His valuable work speaks to the strength and rigor of the field and its importance to the formal educational process and its relevance to the U.S. and the world. This man has played a very critical role in my education, in my higher education. It was Dr. Prince Brown, who helped me out quite a bit, as well as who is here with us today, Dr. Eric Jackson.
Thank you for inviting me to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor.
I had to, when I remember your class, I think I took 2 of your courses
Yes.
in undergrad.
Yes.
And it really, I just want to let you know, it really did stick with me, especially as being a public historian, which I didn't know that I would become that at that time. But you really moved the needle for me personally into that direction and just fostered my love of history, specifically Black history.
Well, thank you for the comments, and I think we need more people like you in the field.
Well, I do my best, absolutely. So before we talk about this book and other things, I really want to talk about, if you could share with my listeners and viewers, your background, your childhood, where you're from, and so forth, and when you were, I guess, little Eric, if you could just share that with us.
Little Eric was born in Gary, Indiana in 1965, that small town right out at the other side of Chicago. I had family in Chicago.
Now,
my dad worked in the steel mill, so that was probably one of the impetus for me to go to higher education, because he had an 8th grade education and my mom took 1 college course, but they always valued education.
Wow. I didn't realize that we actually have a lot in common with that, because my dad only had an 8th grade education, but he grew up in Canton, Mississippi. So we share that. I grew up in South Bend,
Yep.
which is not too far. And every time I hear Gary, I think you're the second guest I've had on that's from Gary, because Fanon Rucker
Yep.
is also from Gary, Indiana. And I just remember my first year at Ball State, everywhere, GI. I'm like, what is GI? And it was everybody was from. It seemed like it was a pipeline for students from Gary to go to Ball State
Yes.
University in Muncie, Indiana.
Yes.
And so I'm always fond of Gary. I always have to pass it on the way to Chicago. So Gary, Indiana.
That's hilarious because I'm a Ball State grad too. You didn't know that? Yeah, I'm a Ball State grad. Class of 88.
Well,
88.
I didn't finish.
It doesn't
There,
matter.
Not there.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
matter. You finished somewhere.
Now I got to ask you this question. I didn't
Yes.
ask, so which dorm did you stay at?
Oh man, it's been so many years. I don't even know.
I was at Woody Shells.
Man,
dorm.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Wow.
I still keep tabs on Ball State because I always tell folks this odd story. So one of the current president of Ball State was one of the previous president at where I'm at now, Northern Kentucky University, he was a friend of mine that we had talked pretty regular because I was the president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association at Northern Kentucky University. So President Jeff Mearns, who's at Ball State now, we would talk pretty regularly, and then he just like disappeared for like a month. And I'm like, where's Jeff? Where's Jeff? Where's Jeff? So I get this notification on my phone. There was a YouTube clip, and it said, come to Ball State University, Muncie, Indiana, to welcome my 16th president of Ball State University. And I'm like, I hadn't been to Ball State in like 15 years. Why would I go to Muncie? And so I pull up the YouTube clip, and Jeff's walking across the stage. And I'm like, he didn't even tell me he was leaving Northern to be president. I'm like, for real, Jeff? So 2 days later, I'm like, Jeff, you could have gave me a heads up that you were gone, man. Not like you could have had to check with me about your career path, but you could at least gave me a heads up that you were like gone. And it's like, yeah. So Jeff and I talk pretty regularly. Like I still fascinated with the law. He's not a typical university president. He doesn't have a doctorate. He has a JD. So he went to law school, and it's one of his claims of fame is he prosecuted Timothy McVeigh, one of the folks who blew up the Oklahoma city building. And so we would talk law and how that impacted folks, and he did a lot of stuff in civil rights. So I'm still fascinated with the law, and he's like, Eric, if you want to go to law school, like, why do you want to go to law school? I'm like, if you want to just teach classes in law, you can just get a certificate and teach classes in law. Like, unless you want to start cranking out articles, like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, I think it's when historians and those that study history, law is a part of that. So you look at policies and how that impacts communities, how that impacts families, and so that's a part of the equation. So absolutely, and lawyers, even when we have Fanon on, he's a lawyer, but he's very much a historian as well.
Yeah, and it fits in my area because one of my specialty areas is American Revolution and Constitution. So that's the basis of American legal structure. However people fall down on it. Folks get into this whole original intent argument, and I find fascinating because if that's the posture you want to take, the original intent of folks was that people of color didn't have the right to vote, or women, or poor people, or massive people in the population. They didn't have. So if that's your interpretation, I'm kind of stuck there.
Well, and then I saw if you talk about your original intent. Second Amendment, they didn't intend that folks would have automatic weapons in the weaponry we have today. So, you got to take that into the equation as well. You can't pick and choose if you decide to have that perspective, which is archaic, and really it doesn't show a sign of progress, So, but my question to you is so what inspired you, or what incited you to take this path down, Black history to teach and just, what was the trigger for you, I guess, so to speak?
So there were a couple things. Like I said, my parents have always valued education, despite them not going to college. Also, I remember one of my earliest three pivotal memories was the assassination of of Dr. King, the assassination of Malcolm, and then probably the pivoting point was Gary, Indiana had this transition period of this nationalist phase of the civil rights movement. At that time, Leroy Jones had not changed his name to Amiri Baraka, but they had come to Gary to talk about how the civil rights movement was going to change to this different phase. And they started talking about those type of issues, this nationalism, this issue of understanding Black joy, this issue of understanding the Black arts movement, and then someone will start talking about the emergence of Black studies, because some of that stuff was emerging at that same time. So that kind of got me fascinated with all of that stuff.
But at this time, you were
A kid.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
you still in grade school.
Yeah, I was still in grade school.
Okay.
And I was a young
And
person.
so, but I find it fascinating. But you were paying attention
of
to
course.
all that
Absolutely.
was taking place.
I mean, Gary, Indiana had one of the first Black mayors in the country, Richard Hatcher. So that was fascinating too, because he's in that same generation of first African American mayors of major cities, and understanding what that meant. But again, I think that my mind was working in that Black studies mindset as a kid, meaning it was in all these different disciplines at the same time, from music. I mean, from a kid, I was fascinated with Miles Davis and all that stuff. Or, again, I'm Mary Baraka and the Black arts, and what is Black joy, and African American and Black history. Like, my mind always worked in these different disciplines of Black sociology and psychology, and what's the role of Black women? Because that was at the time when Black studies was created in the 60s, Black feminism wasn't part of that early generation of those disciplines in that field. It came later on in the 70s and the 80s that folks realized that obviously that Black women have a pivotal origins in the experience of people of color in this country. So yeah, that's so again, Dr. King's assassination, Malcolm, and then this transition to this nationalist arguments, tendencies, ideology that's always been there in the Black community, always been there in the Black experience since people like Paul Cuffey and those folks doing the early foundation of the United States.
So, I mean, you talk about those origins of the Black studies,
Yes.
and understanding that this comes out of a movement.
Absolutely.
It comes out of a movement, and it's multi-layered. You know, you already referred to Black joy. You know, it's policies. It's about law. It's about social economics and all those various different aspects. And so you have a book here, your most recent book, An Introduction to Black Studies.
Yes.
And so in this book, I mean, does it touch on this
Absolutely.
a little bit? And
Yes.
you could speak,
Yep.
you know, what was your motivation for this particular book?
Oh, in addition to just trying to find something to help my students, I always was trying to figure out, because there had been other books written before that, obviously, of Karenga's book on Black studies, which was more aimed at, I think, upper class students in higher education and more jargonistic of universities. What I was trying to do is create a book, and it took me 7 years to write that book, and several publishers, that I was trying to figure out a way that my students could engage in this Black studies field and not get caught up in the jargon, but more importantly, if somebody from the general public wanted to know about Black studies, could they pull a book off the shelf and read it and very quickly and find out this is the origin of Black studies here, or the 8 disciplines of Black studies, and each chapter has learning outcomes or learning objectives. Like, that's what I was shooting at, not only my students having more accessible to this field of Black studies, but the general public. If you pull it off the shelf from a library or bookstore, there was nothing there. And so I said, hey, it's nothing there, so I'll write it. And again, it took me 7 years and several publishers to write that book and put it together.
Wow. Well, it is definitely a much needed book, especially when we talk about the current climate.
Yes.
And I'm curious to get your perspective on, I've reached out. I believe he came to visit your university, Dr. Ricky Jones.
Yes.
Yeah, from at University of Louisville.
Yep.
And he's been very vocal about what's going on at that university and many universities
Yes.
when we talk about Black studies, Pan-African studies,
Yes.
and so forth. And so I'm curious to get your perspective of what's been going on when we talk about Black studies in higher education and what's been some of the pushback, and just to to get your perspective.
Well, I think Black Studies has always been in this precarious position of is it a program? Is it a department? What is it? Is it Black Studies? Is it Pan-African Studies? Is it what's the name? I mean, and there's a reason for those name changes, which is another conversation. That it's always been in this position of how do you fund those type of interdisciplinary programs, and I think it fits in that area. The current climate has to do with funding in higher education in particular, and specifically funding and understanding non-dominant societies' history and experience across the nation. We're in this kind of, I call valley. I mean, I'm a religious person. I think we have peaks and valleys, and if you don't have some sort of spiritual understanding of that, that's a whole nother conversation too. You probably need to figure that out sooner than later, that we're in a valley of understanding that there's always been attacks on non-dominant populations, history, experience, and so forth. And I think we're in a valley at this point of understanding that that material is under attack, but I think there's always the mountains coming sooner than later. So it's not new. It's just a different version. It's a different environment. It's a different experience. And I think we just kind of ride it out. I mean, as a historian, things kind of work itself out in processes and decades and centuries. I mean, as I was having a conversation a couple of days ago with a colleague, historically the United States is pretty young. I mean, it's not thousands of years of history of African society. That's not what it is. The United States is celebrating 250 years this year and going into next year, moving forward. It's relatively young. It's kind of like raising a child. It's like they're in this kind of
when you say child, I think about
adolescent kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So people kicking and screaming, kind of growing up. I mean, I think that's what we're in when it's kind of adolescent phase, because we don't have thousands of years of history. We have 250 years. Talking world history, it's just a blip on the screen, and so we're just in this period of anxiety. And if we understand that historically, I mean, I may not see the change coming, but historically there's always been change. It's just the rhetoric is different for technology reasons and political and economic reasons, but this is not new stuff. I mean, for example, the anti-immigration arguments has been there prior to the Civil War. It was there during World War I, World War II. That rhetoric has always been there. It's just more amplified because of technology and people trying to grapple with the language and the technology. Social media it is what it is. I mean, I'm not one of those folks that say that ban social media, but understand its purpose and its algorithms and its ultimate goal. I mean, you don't have a deep discussion on social media. It's just not where to have nuances. You don't have nuanced discussion on social media. Right. That's not what you do. But what you do have is echo chambers. Like if you get somebody in your little box, you can fortify that same argument fairly easy on social media because it just feeds on algorithms, meaning once you get into this little box and you start feeding into that same websites, they tend to pull up all the time when you go there, and they just kind of know your rhythms.
Right, right. And so, I mean, it's very important for people to know is that the content that comes across your feed is intentional.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's very intentional.
Yes.
And so, and that's how the technology is being used, yes, and probably exacerbating a lot of our social situation that we're currently in. And I like how you call it a valley.
Sure.
And there's two things you brought up in that conversation. I don't mind talking to spirit. I want to get your spiritual aspect of that, but you also mentioned Pan-African studies
Yes.
and the differences. And so I just wanted to ask you, if you could expound upon that, for my listeners, the difference between Black studies and Pan-African studies, and probably some of the dynamics that's involved with that differentiation.
So Black Studies comes out of the 60s and the student movements that was involved in the early years of African American students at particular universities, San Francisco State, New York, NYU, on different coasts. There's a number of universities that started Black Studies movements with Black students organizing to force universities to have a curriculum to respond to and reflect and talk about the African American experience from a multi-discipline perspective, from history to psychology to sociology, the arts, performance arts, music, eventually Black feminism. And so it starts as an American kind of construct. And then the Pan-African studies broaden it out to the diaspora, meaning it's talking about Latin America, it's talking about continent of Africa, bringing those concepts into this Black studies field. And then when it moves outside the corpus of the United States, it takes on a different name, because you're talking about Pan-African studies, you're talking about more of a outside the globalistic perspective. And so these different names kind of respects and moves the focus from purely United States to a more global, international perspective. So it takes on these different names to reflect those global perspectives. But at the core, it's still interdisciplinary, the field. So it's not being amalgamated into like one genre. It has that interdisciplinary perspective as it branches out into a global perspective.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And then, you talked about us being in this valley.
Yes.
And I think a lot of colleagues that I have that are working at historical sites, museums, at universities, in classrooms all over this country, really feeling the impact of being in that valley.
Yes.
And you talked about there's a spiritual element about it that you alluded to, and one of the and when you said that, it made me think about this abolitionist by the name of just Joshua Easton, and he talks about that we can overturn chattel enslavement, but the danger yet is that the spirit will remain.
Yes.
After that system has been overturned. And so he alludes to talk about that spirit. And so when you talk about the valley, from a spiritual aspect, what is your perspective?
I think from a spiritual perspective, and this is part of one of the chapters in the Black Studies piece that folks can kind of resonate with, is there a particular brand of Black Christianity or theology that's always been there, that linked together African traditions with this brand of Christianity that was being forced on enslaved people of color. I mean, obviously, we use the term enslavement and enslaved people to recognize the humanity of people, which gives them agency of understanding their surroundings and developing their own culture. So they created their own brand of faith. People like Richard Allen, the Absalom Jones, starting the first AME church, and it goes on and on and on. And so African Americans have a particular type of Christian faith where they understand the peaks and valleys based on how they interpret the scripture in the Bible, understanding just because you became a Christian, things were not going to be all good, but understanding that at the end of the day, there's some larger power in charge of your destiny, and all you had to do was hold on and understanding like Romans 5:1-3, that talks about perseverance under the auspice of understanding it's going to be some problems. Joy and hope and perseverance comes out of suffering sometimes. I mean, it's like Jesus Christ suffered on the cross. He was hung, he was crucified. But at the end of the day, he becomes this person that helped save folks. Because of that suffering, other people are able to survive. So suffering should not be something you should stay there, but it should be a process of you moving to that next stage. That process of understanding that the power is in that suffering sometimes. You can't skip it. You can't bypass it. You can't jump a couple steps because you have to understand that power. And you can't skip that stuff. And it's not going to be easy because it's just not. It's like growing up. Growing up as a child, you can't skip the hard things because once you become an adult and you start hitting these valleys, and if you don't have the apparatus to navigate those valleys, you're kind of lost. And that's the same thing with your spiritual walk. You have to, you will. It's just a matter of when. Just because you become a Christian doesn't mean things are going to be good. Actually, once you become a Christian, they get worse sometimes instantaneously because you have decided to talk and walk in a different way. But I think that black theology, as James Combs talks about in the 60s, that liberation theology, that thing liberates you because you can speak to when things were bad, this is what happened and this is how I navigated that joy, even in the even in the face of stuff being so bad. And that's what we do as people of color. That's our history. Things are so bad, but we figure out how to create black joy of understanding. We have to figure out how to navigate that stuff because that's what we do. That's our history.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking,
That's fine. That was good. Just doing a quick reset on this one camera, but we're good.
Okay.
You did it.
There we go.
you good, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
While you were speaking, a song came to my head. And for whatever reason, the Clark sisters, Is My Living in Vain? Why, I don't know what it was, but while you were speaking, I could hear those beautiful sisters, those beautiful voices singing that song. And, I think when you peel back the layers and really look at our history, you look at our stories, you look at our biographies of, this journey here in what we call America, you see that creativity that pours out from the struggle, from the pain, whether those are spirituals that are sung in the fields under the hot sun, from the songs, the spiritual uplifting, elevating songs that came out of when that sit-ins and so forth, that were taking place. So definitely, all that plays a role, and that's a part of our legacy. That's a part of our story, and it is tied to a spirituality, which you talked about.
Yes, I mean, songs always pop in my head. I may not, I'm not a performer, but I always have songs. Like, you were talking about the Clark Sisters song. I mean, Ty Tribbett has a song that's called We're Gonna Be All Right.
Yeah.
So he talks about that pain and joy at the same time. It's like, we're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
But you can't skip through this other stuff. I mean, the attack on black studies, it's not new. I mean, there's always been this fascination, and Brian Stevenson talks about this in some of his recent interviews, talks about what happened in this country after it was created as these false narratives of understanding this what we're supposed to be as opposed to reality. It's like after the Civil War, this kind of backlash, and people are talking about how it wasn't about enslavement, and you had this short period of time of the Reconstruction period of 12 years from 1865 to 1877, and then this false narrative of how African-American politicians were not qualified, and so we've always had these false narratives, and so the way of dealing with the false narrative is talking about black studies or black history, and I think that's being attacked on a certain level because it forces folks to deal with false narratives And folks don't want to deal with the false narratives. They can say, oh, the Civil Rights Movement accomplished this legal, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and we're done with the Civil Rights Movement. Well, no, because there's acts and there's reality. And so the false narratives are still there. I mean, there's always these weird false narratives because nobody wants to talk about Native peoples. Like, how did the United States get all this land? Like, you always had all these Native people there. And then you put them on reservations and all this other stuff. You don't want to talk about that stuff. You don't want to talk about the greatest generation during World War II was all these folks who went to war. Well, we also had Japanese internment camps. So you don't want to talk about that stuff. So you want that false narrative, the greatest generation, but.
You want to pick and choose.
Yeah, exactly. And so you cherry pick stuff. And so Black studies, the power of Black studies and Black history or any underrepresented group's history forces folks to deal with these false narratives. And one of my bucket lists is, and I keep hearing this, and I heard this from Brian Stevens, is when he traveled to places like Germany, and they talk about the Holocaust. It's embedded into curriculums, and it's everywhere. It forces your populations to deal with this stuff on a regular basis and process it, as opposed to saying, well, it wasn't that bad. Enslavement wasn't that bad. Or how do you justify Christians justifying owning people of color? Yeah. Like, how do you don't want to deal with those complexities.
And that's why I love primary resources, which is that kind of, this you hear it directly from the resource. One of my favorite publications is David Walker's Appeal.
Yeah.
And he talks about white Christianity.
Yeah.
He talks about the hypocrisy
Yep.
that's taking place, and that is, that's 1829. He publishes that, and I mean, it's often not a part of the American narrative.
Correct.
When we talk about this. And so while you mentioned America 250,
Yeah.
this is also, this year marks 100 years.
Yeah.
Of Black history, 50 years of what was Negro History Week.
Yes.
And then in 76,
Yep.
it advanced to Black History Month.
Yes.
And so that's through an organization that both you and I know very well.
Yes.
So can you talk about, your relationship with the Association for the Study of African American Life and History? We call it ASALH.
ASALH.
Yeah, but could you speak
Wow.
about, your relationship with ASALH, and how did you get involved with the organization as well?
Wow, I've been involved with ASALH. I'm gonna go backwards in time. So currently I am their in-house historian. So I help them with task agreements, working with the National Park Service. Before that, I was on their executive board. Before that, I was just a member. Before that, I was when ASALH's national convention was in Cincinnati in 2017. I was their local arrangement chair.
And I was a coordinator.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's like so many levels of this stuff. I mean, Carter G. Woodson's book in 1933, The Miseducation of the Negro, I think I remember reading that as a kid. I'm like, wow, that spoke to me too. It's like, okay, people are being miseducated on a regular basis. And then that came out in the 30s, and it's 2026, and people are still being miseducated.
Yes.
I'm like, what a profound piece. And it's like, wow. So ASALH's been a part of me. I mean, I can't remember when it wasn't. I mean, even when I wasn't a member, I knew about it because they had a convention in Chicago. And I mean, Gary, it's like a train. Literally, I got on a train as a kid. I mean, I was in Chicago when I was a kid on a regular basis. I mean, because I hopped on the South Shore train, and it was like a 30-minute ride on the train to get to Chicago. And I was at museums and Museum of Science and Industry, at DeSable. I mean, all these places in Chicago, and it was a different vibe there, but it was connecting vibes because people had family in Gary and Chicago and East Chicago and all these different places. Gary was called the region by folks. That's the region.
Oh, you said Gary was called the region?
The region. Yeah, it's called the region. Because you had Calumet City, you had East Chicago, you had
Yes.
all these little pockets of African Americans who could trace their history during the black migration from the south to the north. All of them didn't end up in Detroit. All of them didn't end up in Chicago. All of them didn't end up in New York. All of them didn't end up in Philadelphia. Some of them end up in Gary, Indiana.
But I think it's very important, especially there's more to Gary, Indiana than Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. I mean, when you say Gary, Indiana, I think the first thing people go
Sure.
to is the Jackson 5.
Yes.
You know,
Which is interesting because one of the first questions they ask, are you related to the Jackson? No. That's a hard no. And that's not to disparage anything. It's just like, that's a hard no.
you know what? All these years, I never thought about if there was any type of. I had never thought to ask you that question.
You're one of the few.
Well, that means you said a hard no because you can't sing.
It's a hard, exactly. I can't. I can write. I can play an instrument. I can't sing.
Oh man, but yeah.
But my grandmother knew them before they moved, but we're not related.
Wow. So
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
have any stories that your grandmother shared about the family? None. Okay.
I got no snow.
I was seeing if we could get some inside information.
no.
I know the movie about to come
Yeah,
out.
it's about to jump off here in a couple weeks, man.
Yeah. Wow. So, you know, and so definitely, I appreciate you spending the time. We've having a robust conversation about this legacy, about the scholarship of Black history. And so I know this book has been in publication for a few years.
2003 won the Thomas D. Clark Medallion Award for the best book published by the University of Kentucky Press in 2003.
Okay.
So that's why the little insignia is on there.
I learned from the young people,
Yeah.
you got to clock it. Clock
Yeah,
that
man.
one right there. Clock
Yeah,
it, you know.
yeah, man.
So, I mean,
It's in paperback now. It's on audio book. I mean,
personally,
you can
I
get
like
it all the time.
Personally, I like the hardbacks because I'm tough on books. So, so yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, my question to you is this.
Yes.
50 publications.
Yes.
And you're continuing to write.
Yes.
So what's next? Is there any new publications that are coming out that you can share with us?
Well, I have my history and the full of hope, full of faith, origins and history and legacy of the Underground Railroad in Kentucky coming out either at the end of this year, early next year. Book on the Black Brigade after that. I just had a presentation. And an article coming out. And this is a fascinating topic on Black studies, AI, and health disparities. So my hypothesis in that article is, can AI be used to decrease health disparities in the African American community? Nobody knows because there's not a whole lot of people of color in the AI space. So my first argument is we need to have more people of color in the AI space, like how AIs are created, what people are doing with the data, who owns the AI companies, what's their intention. So that's just surface level. And so my article, and eventually I'll probably have a book in that space of Black studies, AI, and health disparities, because that's another type of technology that's here, and it's not neutral in what it does when it comes to dividing and conquering people. Meaning technology is not neutral. Technology has never been neutral because who owns it and what's the goal usually dictates where it goes.
So so the technology, it has an intention.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that message needs to be very clear, especially as we have so many of these devices, right before us. And it's amazing that we have all this technology, we have all this information, but we talked about the miseducation, the misinformation. So much of it is out there.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if there's more miseducation and more misinformation than there is truthful information.
Absolutely.
You know.
I mean, because the healthcare is part of who I am. I mean, my wife's a retired nurse. My daughter's in the healthcare field. My sister-in-law, who's in Baltimore now, she used to be, I mean, she still is a healthcare executive. She's built hospitals in Doha, Qatar, and Lebanon, and Tanzania, Chicago, New York. So by osmosis, I'm in this healthcare space. And so understanding healthcare, particularly preventive healthcare for people of color, is important to understand. And maybe this AI piece could help them. It could be as simple as, can you train AI to give a typical understanding of how to follow nutrition, exercise, regimens for people of color to decrease hypertension in the Black community? Like, what would AI say? And is that information real? And who checks it?
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yes.
Wow. From a historical standpoint, you know, I didn't think you were going to go there. But when I thought about this is I think about, once again, going to Chicago. Early on, one of the earliest Black hospitals, Provident Hospital, that was in Chicago. And as a matter of fact, at one point, I think it was one of the largest hospitals in the U.S., Black owned and operated. And so I see what you just posed right there is almost like a reframing or reimagination of Black healthcare in the 21st century is using AI in that way. I never thought about that, so that's intriguing.
You have to be in this forward thinking space. I mean, I have colleagues who are leaving higher education because of AI, because students are using it to cheat and da-da-da-da-da. And I understand that to a certain level, but students were being dishonest before AI. That's not the thing.
Wait, hold on. I gotta pause you right there.
Let's be real.
That's the one thing that I laugh about. And when I was teaching when I was teaching in higher education as well, I adopted the same philosophy that I got from your class. And it was wonderful. And I got to tell this story before we get out of here. And so I go into Dr. Jackson's class, and we always have examinations. We have midterms and final terms. He always requires that you can bring a cheat sheet. You can bring one cheat sheet. Just one sheet. And I was like, this man is going to let us cheat on the test? I mean, I did put in so much work. I had my stuff color-coded. I think I had it I had like red up here, green, and I had the front and back. I had it all color-coded up, typed up. I think I had it in like 8 or 10 point font so I could fit everything in. And you did a Jedi mind trick when you did this. Because I put all this work into creating this master cheat sheet. By the time I got to the test, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know that. I know that because I spent all that time. And so, I mean, it's the wonderful Jedi mind trick that you did on us in that occasion. And I've used it. I liberated that same philosophy when I was teaching higher ed as well. Wow. So, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's all into the how to get, and this again is my spiritual makeup. And I say this to my students, and I'll continue to say this to my students. My job is not to flex on you about my knowledge. My job is to help you reach your destiny that was there before you were even born. How do I help you reach your destiny? That's what I do. Because it's not about me. It's never been about me. And I'm not trying to even tell you what I know. Just because I have the 3 letters of PhD in front of my name doesn't mean I know everything. I know a little bit about this area, of this history, of this Black studies that I focused on. 90% of this other stuff, I will tell you, I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, I mean, I can do simple math. That's not my field. But my job is to help you reach your destiny, to pour into you. and know very clearly, as the scripture says very clearly, you have the power of life and death in your tongue. So I would rather speak life into you. So everything I do is for a positive. Because if you speak negative into people, they take that stuff into their spirit. So I'd rather speak positive in life.
There's nothing else to say. That right there, that's a perfect end to this conversation. Dr. Jackson, I thank you so much. I have so much appreciation for you. Black History is 365. Scholars like Dr. Jackson, Dr. Jones, Dr. Prince Brown, who I mentioned earlier, we owe them a debt as they continue to uplift us and preserve our path forward. Thank you. Thank you so much. Black Studies has never been confined to a classroom, a syllabus, or a semester. It was born out of a movement, out of demand, out of resistance, out of a refusal to be forgotten. It came from students who stood up and said, our stories matter. Our histories are not footnotes. Our lives are not electives. This field is a living, breathing discipline carved out of struggle. It carries the voices of those who refused to be silent, who challenged institutions, who built something where nothing was offered. And because of that, Black Studies has always been more than academic. It is memory. It is truth-telling. It is survival. Modern-day scholars like Dr. Eric Jackson and Dr. Ricky Jones carry forward a powerful intellectual legacy, one rooted in the work of giants like John Hope Franklin and Manning Marable. This legacy that we share is not just something we inherit, it's something we're accountable to. We live in a moment where knowledge is being contested, where the teaching of history can be politicized, restricted, and even feared, where the very existence of Black studies in some spaces is questioned, defunded, and diminished. Black studies is more than about the past. It's about the present, realities we are still traversing. It's about understanding systems, naming inequities, and imagining something better. It is about culture and creativity, about joy and innovation, about the fullness of Black life in all its complexity. It reminds us that our stories are global, they are layered, they are evolving. Our stories are not just something to be learned, they are something to be carried forward in the way we teach, in the way we lead, in the way we create space for truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Let's honor those who fought to make this scholarship possible and support those who continue to shape it, and to ensure that the next generation doesn't have to ask for permission to know themselves. I'm your scholar and gentleman in a hoodie. Know thy history.